me just make sure I'm on my best side then.
Yes, yes, show us your best side. I hope you've done your hair. You've not had that lockdown haircut.
Well, I semi-have. My annoyingly, so 12th, I was last week at some webinars, I was saying, great, can get to the barbers and just walk in. He's now taking bookings, which it's actually very good, but really annoying in the sense that I was hoping to have a really nice trim haircut, by now. But hey ho, I'll get my opportunity at some point. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm really pleased to be able to get this in before applications opened. So thank you very much to the team at NWG who do fantastic work, and to get you guys here to listen to our diversion grant round. I'm Caleb. I'm head of change for youth and criminal justice, which is an odd couple. But hopefully I'm going to do justice with that in terms of what I do here. And I'm joined by my colleague, Matt. Matt, do you want to just say hello?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Senior Comms Manager, so I kind of work across the YEF and kind of with Caleb on our change team, as we call it.
So thanks to hi, Bina. Good to see you. Welcome. So it's great to be able to dial in here, and just going to go through our diversion grant round, which is our latest funding stream that we've released at the Youth Endowment Fund. Bina, did you want to say something, by the way?
Hi, no, sorry I'm late. I'm just having issues logging in, but hi.
Good stuff. No problem at all. Good to have you. So I'm just going to share my screen as the recording begins, and just kind of take you through what this is all about. So I'll kick off with we've done a bit of introduction and welcomes, and you may not have really known us in terms of, or come to know us in terms of the Youth Endowment Fund. So it's great to be able to dial in here. As you imagine, perceptions of funders is very different from place to place, depending on who you've dealt with, whether that's your local commissioners to actually commissioning, to comic relief and Paul Hamlin and so on and so forth. So we're really, and obviously we've got very loose ties, but legal ties to the Home Office. So we're really keen to kind of say who we are and what we're here about to do, because perception is a powerful thing, and actually we in order to build a movement, we've got to build trust. So we've got the £200 million endowment from the Home Office to tackle our mission, and our mission is to prevent children and young people from becoming involved in violence. And in order to do this, we need to find out what works, and therefore build and use the knowledge from that to build a movement to put this into practice. We're a what work centre, or at least an ambition. We've got an ambition to be a make it work centre, and we absolutely value working in partnership, because certainly around the issue of youth violence, this is central to all that we're going to do together. So just to kind of tell you, this is our glossy one.
Caleb, just before you start, I did forget to say to people, do put your hand up if you want to ask a question as we're going along, rather than using the chat today, because there's not so many on. We would like to make the session as interactive to your needs as we possibly can. So do pop your hand up if you would like to ask a question or make a comment. Sorry, Caleb. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Sheila. And the other thing is also, Sheila, I can't see everybody else, so please do stop me as you have, just to say, oh, we've got a hand up in that respect. So these things haven't got to that stage yet where you can share a slide and see hands at the same time.
No, they haven't.
which is quite basic for the technical use of these platforms. But yeah, so thank you, Sheila. So this is our strategy on the page. And we're absolutely obsessed with making change happen, which is the far right side. But in order to do that, what does that look like? So we're going to scale up what we find that works. We're going to spread great practice that's out there that doesn't get the limelight or a light shone on it. We're also going to be looking at ways to improve the system, and how you can't do any of these things without convincing other people that they need doing. So in order to do that, we look at the middle section, the amber section, which is about finding what works. And that's mainly about building a consensus that everyone agrees with whether partially or impartially. But to do that, you've got to evaluate good ideas so people can agree with that. I certainly agree with the process. Hence the reason why we're really focused on randomized control trials. Thank you. My lunchtime patty has arrived, which is great news. Jealous of me. And if you're watching this back, sorry, you've missed a moment. But also making existing knowledge accessible. So on our web page, we have the evidence and gap map, which is a 2,000 strong repository, effectively a library of youth violence studies, which is great. And it works really well because on the one side you can look at types of interventions, and then parallel on the x-axis, you can have the outcome. So you can say, okay, let's look at interventions like, okay, mentoring that affects school behavior, for example, or improvement in education. And what will happen is you'll see circles, and those circles, the more circles means the more studies. The smaller means that there is a small deposit of those studies. The bigger circles means that it's the strength. Small means strong. Bigger means blue means not as strong. But equally, what is worth noting is that if you're delivering a certain approach, you can look at that evidence and gap map and say, oh, here's some evidence that backs up what we're doing. And then the last thing we'll do, I mean, just to add, we've got a toolkit that really resembles that in a very simplified form, to say these are the approaches and this is the evidence that sit behind it, which will be available to everybody. And that's really key and important. When we all speak the same language, we get along and things get done. And then lastly, we're going to understand the lives of young people. So the key thing here is we are currently recruiting young people onto our youth advisory board, which is uberly important because actually there's a real danger that we remain as a corporate funder with a corporate ambition, which we're not. We're very, as you probably pick up, we're very different, very interrelational in that respect. So these young people will be able to influence the work that we do, and it won't be tokenistic, it'll be very real. And those young people are what we call the unusual suspects. These are young people who have either been through violence themselves or lived experience, near experience, whichever way you term it, and will be influencing what we do. We also have £3 million aside to work with 120 partners to speak to young people about this issue, which will be a great tool to help us truly understand how young people view this stuff. And as you engage with young people, and they tell you as it is, you improve your services and you improve the offer that they need for them. And then lastly, well, to get all of that, we need to really look at funding good work. And so that kicks off with the priority themes, of which I'm going to talk to you about one today. Actually, I'm going to lean into the up and coming themes. So I'm going to talk to you about another chance, which is diversion from the criminal justice system. And then I'll talk to you about supportive homes, just to let you know when that's coming out with more details. That's actually available in our prospectus now, which you'll get post this meeting. And for those who are here today, you'll get that first. We should
say, Khalid, that we will share the emails of everybody that's attending today with the Youth Endowment Fund, so that they can inform you of any further information that comes out.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Sheila. Thank you for that, because we have so much that we always are sending out in comms, just so that people are involved in what we're doing. Because if we just fund £200 million worth of work, nothing changes. So we need to do much more other things to be able to see that we hit that green bubble, which I'll come to. And the last bit is about the place-based work is about youth violence takes place in very hyper concentrated areas, some estates, some streets. So what work can be funded in those areas to enable young people to thrive. And then lastly, we've got targeted projects, which is things that are really novel, really promising, really exciting, really popular, that haven't really had the level of rigor around evaluation that need it, that can come to us and say, yeah, look, we've got some supplementary funding, we're reaching this level of standard in terms of evaluation, can you take us further? And we'll be funding 5 of those a year, and the application process is 6 weeks. And again, on our website, thanks to the wonderful Matt, and team, we've got loads of things. We've got the actual guidance notes for that now, so you can go check that out. But none of this is possible without the youth sector, education, police, local authorities, because we've got to build partnerships and coalitions to be able to make a movement. And actually, there are a lot of people who aren't represented in those 4 icons, such as housing, such as public health, such as youth offending teams. They're not written verbatim. So if we do this well over the next 8.5 years that we've got remaining on it, we will seek to prevent children and young people becoming involved in violence, but or certainly build a strong evidence base that says anyone that's working within this field should be working to these core principles which have been tried and tested: commissioners, influencers, policy makers. So why we're here today. So just going to share some. Yeah.
Can I just ask, Caleb, will you be sharing this PowerPoint presentation with the people that are there, so just so that they know what to note out or not? Yeah,
we'll be sharing this. We're very shareable,
yes,
like a pack of M&Ms in that respect. So if you're into M&Ms, so why we're here today was we're going to share feedback on some things that maybe some of you may have attended some of our stakeholder engagement. We're going to also talk about this actual grant round and kind of how to apply and what it means to be a YEF partner. And actually, really, most importantly, we want to continue some of the conversations we've been having with vital people within the sector that are helping to protect children and young people. So turning what stakeholders told us into action. Back in October, we released our strategy and gave people a flavour for where we're heading. We also needed to make some decisions about some key priorities, which by asking and engaging with over 600 stakeholders and individuals, that helped to cement some of our decisions that we were going to be making, and actually brought up some alert opportunities for us. So, but thanks to those who were involved, we've captured a lot of that in the turning what we heard into action document, which again you will receive, the gift that keeps giving in that respect, and really pleased to be able to have that as a really transparent reflection on how we take this engagement element really seriously. So most of all, this is some of the things that people said, but most of all what young people said and what young people stated. And we worked closely with Leaders Unlocked to run a few roundtables actually, and young people told us that in terms of this youth violence agenda, actually, do you know what, young people need alternatives to this. We need happier futures away from our streets. We need an alternative or to those things, and actually, you know, talk to us about things that interest us, that things are going to get us into positions where we're happier in the future. So frame it differently is the key message that came out there. So that led to us looking at a positive framing in our theme and language, and you'll hear that a lot of our language is very positive around young people, not deficit-based thinking. Now, some of the deficit-based thinking will come below the outwardly positive. So here today, I want to talk to you about another chart. But as you can see, these are things that young people need to thrive. We feel, and that's what helped us. Certainly was shared with us through the stakeholders. So, you know, a supportive home, adults that they trust, a safe neighbourhood. So we will be looking to run other grant rounds based on these themes. You know, another chance is the top theme, but that we're really honing in on diversion from the criminal justice system. So speaking to all those different stakeholders, they've helped us to decide a few things. One, not just say that we're committed to equality for the sake of saying we're committed to equality, actually, but to act on it. So what we've done is we listened to Black and Asian minority ethnic leaders, working with Black and Asian minority ethnic marginalized children who are disproportionately represented in the criminal justice system. And we said, we're going to have a go at that. And we've heard what you said, and we're going to ring fence £5 to £10 million over the next 3 years so that you can do what you do better. And we're going to find ways that we can work closely together to make sure that what you're doing is written into the echelons of time, so that future commissioners, resources will be wielded towards to affect this disproportionality. We also heard from children and young people who have been marginalized, whether they were a victim or a victim turned perpetrator who is still a victim. In my view, certainly this is what they said, that look, you've got to do more for us. I've talked to you about the child-centered themes, and also what's really important is that a lot of our themed rounds will speak to this higher end of randomized control trials, large-scale programs. That means there's a real possibility and a danger that we've picked up very early on and been challenged on, that we could leave smaller grassroots organizations who are the very heartbeat of delivering services where they are for the people they serve within their communities by the wayside, and therefore we miss out a huge content of the community richness that comes from engaging with such groups. So we've realized this and said, look, the only way we can start to further that is by running multi-site trials, where we will bring together a group of similar approaches. So one, for example, mentoring, centralize their outcomes, centralize their approach, centralize their operations as the best we can, so that we can say, right, now we've got 10 to 20 organizations here delivering the same thing. Let's test that and see what comes out of it. And that includes some capacity building to make sure that they get to the level that is needed. You know, very much what happens is, I mean, we had the pleasure of Dr. Colin Flemin's presentation yesterday with our organization, because we're forever learning, and one of the things she talks about is, you know, the youth workers who used to work with shopkeepers and local people in the sense of not arbitrary statutory governance of bodies, are now working with statutory partners, sat around very serious tables to do with harm reduction and so on and so forth. So that's changed, and not many have morphed into professional development around that. So this is an opportunity for us to answer that question. So having said all that, just wanted to share with you this opportunity that's come up, which is another chance diversion from the criminal justice system. And just to relate that we are a research funder. So what that means is everything we do is evaluable. I mean, like, everything is evaluable. So even our webinars are evaluated because we're obsessed with it. So if we're going to say everything needs to be evaluated, really, we should be evaluating it. We should lead the way on that. You know, kind of to follow us as we do what we say we're doing, not you should do it and we don't. So the question we're aiming to answer is, which diversion approaches work best at preventing 10 to 17-year-olds from becoming involved in violence? So we're going to be funding 10 to 20 programs for the tune of 10 to 20 million. And it's probably important to note and state here that we're not wedded to 10 or 20, and we're not wedded to 10 and 20 million. We're wedded to great and good applicants. And the bar in that, in terms of how many are successful, is based on the quality of the application. Our applications that we receive. But there are 4 key turning points. And before I do talk about the 4 key turning points, which link to this research question, the reason why we've come up with this is because we know that children need another chance, alternatives to arrest, alternatives to conviction, and alternatives to custody. And we know that if we can prevent the pipeline of those going into institutions such as secure estates and so on and so forth, we can reduce the damage that causes to society, the cost it causes to society, and mostly give young people the livelihood that they should have. So, and now it's probably worth stating that here, you know, John, our executive director, often talks about that children are the main thing, and we've got to keep the main thing the main thing. And you'll see where I'm heading with that in terms of how we actually express that in what we're doing. There are 4 key turning points. The first one is not yet arrested, but identified by statutory bodies or the police at high risk of becoming involved in violence. This is typically your multi-agency exploitation hubs, your multi-agency safeguarding hub panels, your community safety referral teams. You know, this is the statutory multi-agency approach to who are the kids we need to support and help here and now. Because if we don't, it only escalates and gets worse. And at the point of arrest is normally speaks to divert custody type programs. Prior to charge and court action is normally out of court disposals. That includes youth conditional cautions and youth cautions. That includes community resolutions such as restorative justice. And at point of injury due to a violent incident. So this is when a young person turns up in A&E or after a violent altercation, and it normally speaks to a teachable, reachable moment, but as his maps up and down the country. But it's mainly the young person has arrived because something fatal, something non-fatal but serious has happened to them in that respect. Things that are out of scope are children who are too low lead. You know, here's Jimmy, here's Caleb Jackson, goes to football twice a week. He's in detention a few times, but everything else is pretty much okay. And may truant once in a while, but that's as far as it all goes when you do a deep dive. Those are young people who are really early stage that we wouldn't be interested in. However, young people on the curve is who we're interested in. So these are children who have corner warnings, child abduction warning notices. These are children who are missing from home. These are children who encounter lines, gangs, substance misuse, aggression, have high levels of aggression. These are young people who have been victims of domestic violence, etc. So just to paint kind of the picture of the type of young person there, the thing I've been probably hitting home about to be really clear is it's kind of your Jaden Moody, either before he kind of moved to London, where he was kind of propping up, or when he became very much involved in that lifestyle because he was being exploited to be involved. And then supporting programs that are post conviction, someone served time in a custody in terms of jail. We wouldn't be looking because they've been sentenced. We wouldn't look at that in this round. We might do in future rounds, but in this round we won't be. Programs and activities that we expect to see and hear from: parenting, family support, mental health, therapeutic support, restorative justice programs, things that link to one of our YEF primary outcomes, which is things like reduction in offending, reduction in gang violence or gang involvement, reduction in being involved in county lines, reduction in aggression as another one. So these are what we call worthwhile outcomes, and there might be subset secondary outcomes such as confidence, resilience, things of that nature. So just to give you a bit of a frame of what we're expecting to see. Single journey pathway. So this is very key and interesting. So let's just say you have 100 young people, and there are 5 ways that you could work with that young person. That includes substance misuse, that includes services, that includes family support, that includes mentoring, that includes a victim awareness course. And every young person may end up on any of those. And that's really complicated from an evaluation point of view, because it's hard to track which one is most effective for young people. However, what I would say is if it's the same kind of journey through the eyes of the young person, who they just land in a service and get some support, and actually a part of that support is those 4 things, whether chronologically or side by side with some flexibility, we would want to hear from that. And there are some programs which are very simplistic in the sense that you come to attention wherever those 4 turning points, and you go and you get given an intervention, which is, I don't know, mentoring for 26 weeks or family support for 14 weeks or so on and so forth. We're happy to see programs that work in parallel. So young person gets mentoring whilst family gets family support, and that's the package. So we're keen to understand this from the journey of the young person, that they get what they get, and that's the intervention. You might have a caseworker who's doing all the interventions with the young person, or doing a scheme of work with the young person, and that's the intervention. So we would look at the caseworker being the intervention and say, right, because of this caseworker, this is what happens to the young person. This works or it doesn't work, type thing. Organizations that we want to work with, they're registered, charity, public or private sector, but they've got to be in partnership with if they're not a public sector, they've got to be a partnership with the public sector group, which is either police, VRUs, youth offending services, or acute healthcare trust, which speak directly to those 4 key turning points. If it's a strong multi-agency arena where you have some of these partners in, and it's not maybe led by social work, but these partners attend and it's clear, then great, we want to hear from you. If there isn't any of these partners and it's kind of self-referred because we think there's a problem and we're not one of these key partners, there may be some question marks as to kind of the validity of the young person that you're working with to make sure that they are the right person. Normally, this is leaning towards programs that are already doing this stuff quite fluidly as we speak. So let's talk about eligibility. Operating in England and Wales, Bleed organisation is a registered entity legally. The project is looking at reducing likelihood of young people becoming involved in violence later. It's already been delivered. It's not a new project that's going to be put together to apply to this round. It's just something you're already doing, and actually you're trying to get it to the next level in terms of the evaluation steps. Working with 10 to 17-year-olds, some of them may be 9, some of them may be 18, but they're 18 because they were 17 or 16 or 15 when the program began. And whilst I'm here, the program can be funded for up to 3 years because that helps programs to get to scale, which is an important feature, and I'll explain why. And the young people referred by statutory agencies, or rather stamped by statutory agencies, and working with potential to reach scale within the next 2 years. And scale is 100 young people. And I'll talk more about the numbers so we know where we're heading with this. And lastly, committed to an independent evaluation partner to gather data and evaluate your project. So that means if you're working with Oxford now and delivering a great piece of work or an intervention, we would say we'll have to park your relationship with Oxford and pick up your relationship with a match partner that we will match you with. And I'll talk to you about why that is shortly. So assessing applications, there's 2 key elements: great plan, strong capability to deliver the plan. And part of the great plan is addressing those worthwhile outcomes that I began to talk about: aggression, bullying, perpetration, reduction in involvement in gangs, and actually, if well delivered, you can see that it's achieving the outcome that you set out to do, and aiming to reach the right types of young people, not low-level young people, and likely to lead to change. And this is an interesting point because what we're talking about here is novel approaches. This is the "and so what" question. So I'll give you a really a key thought on that, which is if the program is a victim awareness program, and a young person comes along, whether you admit or don't admit guilt, I think you've got to admit guilt to be able to get that as a diversionary activity, or out of court disposal. Then the young person goes on the the victim awareness program, writes a letter of apology, and that's it, done and dusted. Our thing will be, and so what is the next thing? Is that going to change the national landscape? Whereas programs that are doing that and maybe offering support for that young person post those 2 things could lead to national change, because actually the young person is getting wider, much needed support at a critical time in their life. So that's one example. Another example is maybe it's directly tackling disproportionality from the frame of, actually there's an external panel that says just because you are no further action in terms of police speak, but equally remaining on investigation, or actually your offence is low level and the Crown Prosecution Service is not interested for the reasons of it just doesn't meet the public interest, actually you still need support. So we, the panel, have decided that you're going to get an intervention, and this intervention looks like X. That, those sort of practices that could lead to national change is what we're really keenly interested in. So strong capability to deliver the plan, likely to reach the right types of young people, you're able to deliver, you're valuable, which I'll talk about, and then that 100 within 2 years is the important bit. And actually more of this guidance is happening in 4 days when the application's open. So we're going to have a detailed guidance which is released, which our wonderful colleagues within comms have prepped, and we're ready to press the go button as we, in anticipation of the excitement of the applications that will come through the door, and see this in action. This is us doing this properly. in terms of the way we want to do things here at YEF. So evidence and evaluations. What does it mean to be a Youth Endowment Fund partner? In the theme round, this is the most robust, rigorous, methodologically assent or approach to any funding we do here. Other funding streams aren't the same in the same level, but we'll head towards some of them will head towards, like the target projects will be heading towards this way, whereas the Black and Asian minority ethnic funding will not be the same level of rigor. It will still do some great things in that respect. So let's kick off with commitments. We're committed to finding what works. That's why we're doing this evaluation element. Just like you and I go and take a COVID test, we want it to tell us whether we've got COVID or not. And actually, it's really robust and part remove the failings of the earlier episodes where they were still trying to testing and trialing things. And we pretty much know that yes, you have or you don't have, but considering that you do the swabs properly as well. If you've had the opportunity to do that, that's quite an interesting thing. But we know it works, and so our promise to children, who are the main thing here, is that we're going to find programs that work for you. Because if you say it doesn't work or it doesn't work, it shouldn't be funded in that respect. So off the back of that, we're likely to be leading towards robust trials within 2 years. Good old Nokia in the background there. And also we'll be looking at funding pilot studies outside of the randomized controlled trials ready programs. And the idea is that if your program is really fantastic and promising, we will look at pilot studies and possibly feasibility studies, which I'll talk about, and look at what would happen if the children didn't receive the intervention that you have. But what does it mean to need existing evidence? Well, we need to know that you've got a theory of change, and this is modern day currency. I've been saying this all couple of weeks actually. Bitcoin, if you're into cryptocurrency, is a digital currency which is crazy. They think it will catch gold by the end of the next year or two, but it's here to stay. And theory of change certainly is the same modality that a lot of funders are talking about this. A lot of researchers are talking about this. Is a great way just to evidence on a page how you do what you do, from the point of needs to the point of outcomes, and in between is the connecting dots called activities, and just showing what activities lead to those outcomes. But the reason why I'm saying that you've got to have that is because it's the first step of the 10 steps evaluation success model from Early Intervention Foundation. So you can see here that confirming your theory of change is the first step, and then you're looking at developing your logic and blueprint model, which is basically saying, okay, we found that the evidence that sat behind that, let's see if it starts to work in general. With the young people we're talking about. Feasibility stages, okay, let's now put this onto a number of young people and track them. And that's normally 20 young people. Then piloting for outcomes is actually, let's scale this up a little bit more and see if it still remains true. And at this point, you're looking at 30 to 50 young people. Then you test for efficacy and effectiveness, which is 100 plus around here. So as you can see, we're looking for effectively stage 5, 6, and 7. Mainly 6 and 7, but if it's a really promising program that we could do feasibility with, because it's different from everything we've heard, we would look at that. So it's worth you noting, and you'll get this slide. You click it, and it'll take you through to a bit more knowledge base about this, because we like to share. So being a YEF partner, just also worth you noting that we don't actually expect you to understand or have a clear idea about how your program will be evaluated. We will help you do that through our extensive co-design process, which will take 3 months. And that comes from our initial launch grant round, where we did things so speedily that we didn't get the chance to really sit down and say, okay, how are we going to bake this cake? Who's going to do what? And a key thing is that everybody gets away and moves away from our dream team in terms of how we work together, very happy. And how we work together in terms of roles and responsibilities, we want every program to have the best chance of success, because this issue, that we're going after around youth violence and helping young people is one that's important and close to our heart. And actually, we know that when you're starting to talk about RCTs and evaluations being gold level, things change. As in, you're able to knock down doors where the people may or may not agree, and change the landscape of this agenda for the future. And we've certainly seen that in health. Look at medication, medical fields. And let's look at obesity, for example. It's pretty much a holy grail in the sense that to go against what the research has said is almost a crime in itself. So, but because the evidence base is so strong, and it built a movement around that, and you can see that stuff working. Parents are getting letters saying, "No, your kids have had too many sweets." That's how ingrained it is. So we need to get this to the same level. Hence the reason why this is a high bar. So the partner does the work in terms of delivering with the individuals. The evaluator does the evaluation, and we just make sure that everyone's happy and continues to be happy in this dream team. And we uphold the standards and make sure that we support and mediate when things go wrong. Our program managers will work with the partners. Our evaluation managers will work with the evaluator. What happens with the findings? Well, we'll publish everything. Whether it's a success or not success, there's loads to be learned, and we're learning here, and we'll publish all of that. And in order for it to move forward, but we want every program to have the best chance of success. Long-term, longitudinal studies is a very, very empty desert, really, in terms of 5 years later, did that intervention have any impact on that young person still? Have they stayed out of the criminal justice system because of what's happened? And so we just don't know enough, and we've got the opportunity, which is very timely in terms of building something, having a real go at how do we continue to collect and store information of children who've been supported on the partners that we have. And what does that look like? Go for it. Oh, I think are you on mute, Sheila?
It's because my phone inadvertently went off.
Oh, okay, no problem. And did you have a question? I saw your hand up, right?
Yes, I do. So one of the things that we've seen over the years is that it's the Innovation Fund, for example, projects that have started up and run for a year or maybe 2 years, and you start to see some really, really good, valuable work happening, and then the funding stops and the work stops. So that to me is one of the difficulties that we've got in terms of proving what works and that longevity.
Massively. I mean, really great point, Sheila. I think the key here is if we were at the levels that we should be on some of these things, they wouldn't be the first things to get cut when the push comes to shove, and it will be self-protecting in that respect. So, but equally, we've got such a minefield of what looks like it's working and what's working, and the dots in between are is a bit of a crystal maze in that sense, because we don't have a general consensus on what we think works, and so it doesn't make any. It's harder to get a decision from someone like the Treasury or ministers who are sometimes completely removed, not just because of the things that they've got to do, but how do you make this a staple of their daily, and whoever gets into government and however they do what they do, they've got to be able to be sure that the decision they're making, which it's a very valid one, and they've got to be able to fall back on, well, here's the evidence and this is why we're making the decision. I mean, if we just take into context, right, if we look at COVID and how much money has come out for COVID because of where we're at, it's been a mix of chaos and science whilst trying to work it out, and political will in that respect, how we've gone about it, who's done what, whether it was right, whether it wasn't. The thing I wanted to say here is that the science played a big part in making decisions, and therefore led to resources, and many people were involved in that. So I don't think we'll ever get to that scale around this agenda, but it's important that we use that way of thinking, because some hard elements of evidence and data and impact speak true to certain rooms, and I think that's why we understand that these rounds, these are our golden ticket in one respect, to really push this agenda into the forefront.
Yeah, I think there's also an issue that we've had over the years. I know we had a plethora of research following Operation Retriever and Rochdale, and the Children's Commission inquiry, and there was a whole load of research, serious case reviews, and research inquiries. And I know in a very short period of time we had more than 400 recommendations, which were in a way too many for everybody to embed in their practice. But the question for me is, how do we know those recommendations were the right recommendations? So the research and the practice is saying that, but it was an emerging theme, and somehow we've got to test that those recommendations that have been made to us through research are valid as well.
Yeah, so there's a few things here. So let me give you a few examples. The first thing is, if we take child sexual exploitation and where it came from and where it is now, child sexual exploitation is recognized in every place, schools, social work, businesses, hotels. Like, everyone has a clear understanding as to, or clearer understanding as to that. And if you think about that journey, I mean, that's been over a decade now. And the resources that are leaning into that are quite, everyone can get the training on it. It's well embedded within safeguarding. People know what to do, and so there was a political will, as well as people are motivated, and actually became daily business. And certainly, I feel as though everyone knows how to recognise that. But if I was to take the same situation with child criminal exploitation, we're still years behind in terms of that element, and going through some of the early pains of kind of the same exploitation of vulnerable children in that respect. Speaking to the number of recommendations, one of the things we're really proud to say is that we're trying to make everyone talking similar language, because I think that helps. And then I think the second thing is also we're making everything accessible, and using the data and evidence to lead that. I think when there's too much in a buffet, you tend to probably not select the best things that you like, but the things that you're used to. Whereas if we can create something that is very easy for anyone to jump on and speak from, I think we empower people to make the right decisions in that respect. We're working with VRUs saying, listen, we want to know all about your learning. PCCs, we want to know about all you're learning. People are coming to us to humbly to say, where is this direction going for? We need someone to consolidate all of this and move in a direction. It's not.
And there is something about ensuring that we embed the learning that we've had over that journey of sexual exploitation, because it's so linked with criminal exploitation. And whilst criminal exploitation has got its own nuances, there's an awful lot of learning in that exploitation, grooming, recruitment, targeting, grooming, all of that needs to be learned and carried through, so that we don't lose some of that stuff that took such a lot of learning.
Yeah, and this is it. I mean, I like to talk about vulnerability and the roots and shoots, and how it exposes itself. But in all honesty, I think around this youth violence agenda, the thing here is that a murder costs us, and it's not about cost, but a murder costs us £3.6 million per go. And actually, look at Jaden Moody, the opportunities that we would have had to try and intervene in his life to prevent what happened to him happening, are still ambiguous, in the sense that things aren't joined up the way they should be, as strongly as they should be. But money will still go towards things that may not be working, and we just don't know. And so our position and our place is, if it says it's working, we've got to test it, and it's got to reach that gold standard. so that it embraces a different conversation to allow resources to flow to places where it is working and save kids' lives. And as you can see, none of this is possible without building a movement. If you don't have a movement, you can have as much research, as much evidence, as much evaluation, as much recommendations as you like. If no one's using it because you haven't been able to bring people on a journey along with you, then it's just sat on a shelf. And although it's gold, it's hidden gold in that respect. So yeah, I really welcome your thoughts there, Sheila. And that's why we're here. We're doing our best to very much cultivate the best minds and all of this stuff to say, you know, how do we deal with this? Because this is not a singular agenda. It's very intersectional in terms of what its approach is.
It is. And I think over the years, the network of the peer support that the network's created has taken a small nugget of something that's worked well and shared it across the network, and it's grown and grown and grown. But you're quite right, there's no evaluation behind some of that work to know whether it feels like really good practice, it feels like improved practice. It doesn't, none of it feels like best practice, because we wouldn't have a problem if we got best practice. And it's just, so the evaluation is really key for me.
Yeah, and one last point, and I'll move us on, because I'm conscious we'll only have 9 minutes left for other questions. But like, very quickly, let's take mentoring as an option. Mentoring that is widely used, for example, in the voluntary sector settings, and the evidence base that sits behind it is really weak. And so actually no one's had, but not mainly because VCS organizations don't have the opportunity for, you know, bringing on board universities and be attractive for pro bono reasons to build that base. So actually someone's got to test whether mentoring works, because if it does, all of a sudden the best organizations in the country can get some funding to do brilliant work, rather than having to kind of hand in cap and say, oh please, you know, give us money to do this brilliant work. Because actually, what does that mean? Is your work actually brilliant? So there's so much ambiguity around this whole agenda that I think the key thing here is, you know, going back to that strategy on the page, I think if we do those things really well, we create seismic shifts which allows this conversation to go in a different direction in that respect. I'll quickly kind of go through just being a summary of a partner, and then go open for questions and just to give timers. But we're going to find and support promising programs. It needs to be independent, so independent evaluators, just to minimize bias, going back to the conversation we just had now, because it improves people's confidence, builds a general consensus, which then leads to change. Everyone knows what they're doing. We're a dream team, and we're working towards effectiveness and efficacy, because that's the gold standard to make things change. And lastly, we'll need to collect data around young people, and just to see how it's worked in a longitudinal effect of what we're doing, because there simply isn't enough of that, and there isn't enough blueprint of how to do that. So maybe we can help through these rounds to deliver on that, and others can follow. Timelines, we open on Monday, and that's where you go way. Certainly I will be going way. I'm coming to land. I keep saying I'm coming into land on Monday. Tomorrow actually, Matt picked me up, whoever I'm with picked me up. I'm desperate to see colleagues. But 14th of May we close, so just under a month. Shortlisting takes place from the 30th of June. That's informing those who got through this kind of the next stage. We go through a co-design period, which is how do we evaluate this, make sure everyone's happy with it, and that everyone knows what they're doing, and then and interviews. And then once that's happened, we go into a contracting stage where we sign contracts and we kick off that way. So I'm really keen to answer questions. I'll stop sharing. Yep, stop sharing. And please raise your hand, and we can chat this last 7 minutes. And then I've got a board meeting dead on 1, so I've got to be out. All right.
Are there any conversations out there? So I have a question. Does the fund only support work that is frontline delivered?
In this round, yes, in this round it would be basically, and we understand that, you know, okay, so got 3 workers working with 15 kids each. 45 kids want to get to 100, need 3 more workers. They need training, they need development. We understand that bit is part of operational cost to get to scale. But this particular round looks at that. Agency collaboration looks at how do you work with others to share power to be able to deal with some of the interventions that for children. How do you share power? How do you share strategy? What does that look like? And that comes out in January. There's also just whilst I'm here, the supportive homes round that's coming out in September, and effectively that's about working with families and children within their home context in that respect. Thank you for the question. Does the fund happen every year? So this fund is for 3 years. We're going to run, I think it's altogether 4, I think, Matt, 4 theme rounds, because they run for 3 years, each one. And we've got to get to 2026 where all the theme rounds have finished doing what they need to do, because now the rest of it is about scaling up the programs that we found. So this theme round will open and close, and then that will be it, and it'll be working with those partners for the next 3 years and sometimes more. And then we'll have another theme round in September, and then there'll be another theme next year, 2 themes next year and 2 themes the year after. But yeah, that's how the multi-site rounds, we'll talk about that in the winter time, so make sure you get on our mailing list. And the Black and Asian minority ethnic round will also happen later this year or early next year as well.
And next week we're hosting one where you're talking about COVID, aren't we?
Yes, that's right. So last year we launched a £6.4 million COVID round, and a large part of this was looking at how smaller organisations adapted. So we've done some research, so we'll be kind of running through that. So that's next Monday 26th, I believe, at 3 o'clock.
Yeah. Roughly.
At 2 o'clock, sorry. Yeah.
2 o'clock, yeah. Well, I know we certainly did a lot of work around how people changed practice for COVID very quickly. So it'll be very interesting to see what you found that worked in that. Are there any more questions out there from people? Very conscious that I've asked a lot.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Thanks for the information today.
This is Yoni, is it?
Yeah, hi Yoni.
Hi.
If we've got a project we're considering for this, but the strengths of the project I feel apply to both this and the targeted fund. And I was wondering if you'd have any advice on which one we should sort of follow if we feel that we sort of equally pertain to both.
Yeah, I think the most helpful route there, Yoni, is guidance notes on Monday. I would say take a pitch from guidance notes, really sit through and go, can we deliver on what this requirement is? And actually we've got guidance notes for this, and we've got guidance notes for the targeted projects as well. So I would say definitely 100% use that. I don't know too much about your program, but if your program speaks to all the points I've spoken about, and it has a strong evidence base and is at one of those 4, 5, and 6 levels of the early interventions 10-step process, I would say yeah, definitely, because the other thing is what you do here was to stand you up for applying for a targeted project. There is some similarities. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I think Matt's posting it now as well, which is great.
And we all put a lot of work into creating bids and doing. Is the first stage very lengthy?
Good question. I haven't actually. So I'm more the external facing element of the organisation. From what I've heard from other people that have filled it in, the first stage probably takes best part of an hour, possibly 2 hours, should you have all the information already pulled together. And also depends on your typing speed, but mainly it's those 2 bits. I mean, I think the most we ask for is like 500 words
right.
in any category. So, but there's quite a few questions. So, if you've got everything to hand and ready to go, hour, 2 hours, just inputting it should be no problem. It just depends on how ready your information is. So yeah, that's where it's a bit of a how long's a piece of string, because someone might not be incredibly fast, some are more mobilized, some have it in the same place. So but it tends to be, if you're ready and you're ready to input, about an hour, 2 hours.
Yeah, and just to kind of build on that, it just goes back to the point, just look at the guidance thoroughly, because the last thing we want to do is people to apply if it's not quite right for them. So yeah, read the guidance and make sure you're kind of ticking all the boxes before you kind of spend a couple of hours doing an application, I'd say.
We're about bang on time, and I'm conscious that Caleb cannot be late for his trustee board meeting.
Cannot be late. So thank you.
So thank you very, very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. And I'm sure if anybody's got conversations, you'll have their emails, so you'll be able to have that direct conversation with them. We'll share the PowerPoint with everybody. If you can send it to us, I know you'll send it as well. But we'll put it on our website too, so that people have got it and we can share the information as widely as possible. And everybody, thank you for attending today. It's been very good, very, very useful. Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much, Sheila.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.